Good morning, everybody. Morning. Welcome. I'm so delighted to be here. My name's Catherine Erdly, and I'm going to be talking to you today for the next half hour approximately on 4 trends that will shape retail in 2023. Just a little bit about me before we jump in. My name, as I said, is Catherine Erdly. I'm a small business and retail expert. This is my 23rd year in the retail industry, so I've seen a few things, let's just put it that way. I'm also very proud to be a Forbes contributor, writing about starting and scaling a product business, as well as a Small Business Britain champion and expert speaker and retail commentator. And everything that I'm going to be talking to you today is based on the work that I've done for my Forbes article on retail trends, where I got to speak to a number of different selling platforms, retail experts, retail consultants, to gather together not just my thoughts, but also their thoughts about what's ahead for 2023. Because let's face it, it is a big unknown at this time. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover what just happened. I always like to start looking forward by looking back and talking a little bit about 2022, where we're at, what the kind of environment is, if you like, that we're all operating in. Now, a lot of you will be aware of the kind of environment that we're operating in, but I'm a big believer in knowing the full truth and having a look at some real facts. Then we're going to talk about 4 trends that are going to be impacting retailers, product businesses in 2023. And more importantly, I'm going to be touching on what that means for your business, because it's one thing to know what's happening and another thing entirely to understand what that actually means that you should be doing with that information. So that's the real focus of today's talk. We will have time at the end, hopefully, for a couple of questions. If not, then I am going to be around, so if you want to come up and talk to me afterwards, then you're very welcome to. So, 2022. When I was thinking of an image to sum up 2022, this was the best one that I could come up with, a roller coaster. Does anyone else resonate with that? Yes. Thank you, Alicia. So, after 2020 and 2021, one of the most common things that happened when I asked retail experts and consultants about, do you think 2022 was more challenging than 2020 and 2021? And most of them were like, I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but yes. And of course, there were several factors that really played into that. The Consumer Confidence Index. So, as I said, I'm a big believer in facts, and I'm a big believer in numbers, images speaking 1,000 words. And I think that this graph, which shows you the Consumer Confidence Index, really underpins a lot of what we saw happening in 2022. So the Consumer Confidence Index is effectively a measure where every month they ask a cross-section of consumers, how confident do you feel that the economy is going to improve across the next 12 months? And then they log the numbers. And as you can see, in 2022, we had some historic lows. So they were talking about the lowest consumer confidence numbers since records began. Now, they did slightly begin to improve towards the end of the year. And I will just say that all the numbers that I'm talking about today, they go up to November 2022. The December numbers are being released this week, so it's a slight lag to it. But effectively, what we're looking at is a consumer that is very unclear about, or very unoptimistic, if you like, about the economy improving over the next 12 months. Coupled with that, another horrifying graph, which is the inflation. So inflation also hit historic highs this time, again in October, coming down slightly in November. But in November, we were talking about 10.7%, and any time they talk about inflation decreasing to 10.7%, you know that we're in pretty exceptional times. And Andrew Goodacre, who is the CEO of the British Independent Retailers Association, or BIRA, he was talking about the fact that really, if you think about the retail industry, we had coupled with inflation, which was at historic highs, but equally you have retailers who were seeing energy costs themselves increased by 400% on the previous year, and staffing costs by up 10%. So really just those few numbers give you a real snapshot of what has been happening and the difficulties that we've all been contending with in 2022. A quick recap then on Christmas spending. As I said, we don't have all the numbers in yet for December, but early indicators from the British Retail Consortium suggested that their members saw Christmas sales increase on last year, on 2021, but below inflation. So they were up 6.9% growth, which effectively was a net decrease in volumes. And equally, Barclays, who account for over half of all UK credit and debit card transactions, were showing increases of around 4.4% on spending for Christmas, which again, if you take off the impact of inflation, suggests that volumes were down. Now, they weren't down drastically, but of course, across the whole economy, that is quite a significant shift. And the outlook for 2023 then, it is clear from whatever source you look at really, that we will be in a recession. KPMG called it a shallow but protracted recession. In other words, it's not expected to be as deep, for example, as the 2008 economic crisis, but it will continue throughout 2023. We're also expecting inflation to slow, but it will slow to 5% as opposed to 10%, and effectively means that it will be stabilizing at these higher prices. And of course, we have got more hits coming on in discretionary income, with things like interest rates going up, which will impact the millions of people who will be rolling off their fixed rate mortgages this year, as well as more increases in energy costs. So now that I've thoroughly depressed you all, let's talk about what's ahead for 2023. I think the thing that I would really just try and highlight is that as much as these numbers and the overall outlook feels very difficult, it's not the same thing as people are not spending. People are still spending. We're still seeing customers going out there. They have needs, they have desires. If you go and look in a lot of physical retail spaces, I was out a lot over Christmas and in January, there are people out, there are people shopping. So whatever you do, do not confuse the fact that this is going to be a difficult economic time with the fact that nobody's going to be buying, because they 100% are. But it just means that we are all called upon, as always, as I feel like I've said this every year, to be the very best that we can and to be really as tuned in as possible to what consumers in 2023 are going to want to buy, and also to be aware of some of these trends that are really impacting and reshaping the industry. So what I'm going to talk you through is 4 different areas. We're going to be talking about the value for money mindset, circular everything, which is really all about, well, I'll tell you later in a minute. Really working on developing fans as opposed to just getting new customers. And then also I want to talk a little bit about e-commerce, which has been evolving throughout 2022, and we're expecting to see some shifts in 2023. So, value for money mindset. We can't ignore the fact that even though, as I said, consumers are still buying, they are conscious of what they're spending. And we are seeing lots of different behaviors that impact that. One of the first things that we see is consumer confidence tends to have an impact, particularly on larger ticket items, so things like furniture, mattresses. They tend to be, you see the purchase rate of those decline during times of lower consumer confidence. The consumer is also simply being more considered. They're thinking longer and harder about purchases that they might previously have made on a more of an impulse buy. We're also seeing things like skimpflation is a term that I've seen bandied around, where consumers are making choices in some areas of their purchasing to actually downgrade the quality that they're buying in areas where they're less fussed about these particular things, and therefore they're trading in for cheaper options. And we can see things like the rise of the budget supermarkets like Aldi and Lidl as examples of skimpflation. So as retailers, how do you manage this? And this was the question that I asked a lot of the experts when I was putting this piece together. How do you, as a retailer with rising costs, work towards serving a customer that is really concerned about value for money? How do you both meet your needs as a business to improve, maintain operational profit, as well as work with this customer? The first thing is quite clear from all the discussions that I've had, is that number one, value for money is not the same as cheap. And I think that it's really important to understand that. There can be a temptation to say that today's consumer will only want things that are cheap, will only want things that are on a deal. But ultimately, if you go for that method, if you go for just trying to cut your prices or offer nothing but discounts, then very quickly the impact on your operational profit will be really severe. So it's being aware of the fact that the consumer wants value for money, but then really communicating why your products represent excellent value. And again, that is not about price point. BIRA, the British Independent Retailers Association, says that value is a combination of price, quality, and service. Yes, the customer will at certain points be looking for offers, but really the product is key. So don't go for the discount without offering the service and the ideal product. The Boston Consulting Group, which is the world-leading consultancy, talks about, do you have to simplify your range? Really, what we're talking about here, where you're trying to manage a value for money customer as well as maintain your operational profit, those two things together, you have to be as nimble as you possibly can be. That may be really asking yourself, will the customer want this product? Really keeping a handle on your stock, which is music to my ears. I'm all about keeping your stock under control. But really being aware of that, and this is not the time to be carrying excess old stock, for example. So really, if you have to simplify your range in order to stay more nimble, then that's something to consider. But also just the way that you talk to your customers as well. Are you explaining to them about the value? Are you acknowledging that they have concerns about their spending? Are you explaining that you may have a different range of price points? Are you being really clear with your customers what your entry-level price points are, if you have them? And are you explaining to them, again, why your products represent excellent value? I'm holding too many things, sorry. Okay, so moving on to the second trend that I think is really important for everyone to understand and to at least consider what it means for your business, because it isn't a trend that everyone's going to be able to implement in the same way, but it's something that is really reshaping retail. So I called it circular everything, but really it's about the rise of people who want to purchase secondhand, or they want to, at the very least, purchase things that are renewable, repairable, recyclable, upcyclable. So second-hand retail, for example, bear in mind that the overall retail spend in 2022 was struggling to stay above inflation. Second-hand retail grew by 30% globally and is expected to grow by 85% between 2023 and 2025. It's one of the fastest growing areas of retail. And I don't know, does anyone here have teenagers? Yes. So the whole stigma about buying secondhand has completely been reversed. And in fact, Generation Z are the most likely to want to buy secondhand. And the idea of going and trawling around charity shops to look for that discovery element, that excitement, that is really prominent. There are more platforms than ever for people to buy secondhand, and there's more technology than ever for retailers to implement their own secondhand purchasing through their own websites, for example, even allowing them to do it peer-to-peer, but they're getting the commission instead of, for example, eBay. Speaking of eBay, there was a major moment this year where secondhand entered the mainstream, if you like, where eBay was the fashion sponsor for this year's Love Island. Previously, fashion sponsors for Love Island had been one of the fast fashion labels. This year, it was eBay, who were championing their pre-loved fashion. And eBay, as a platform, saw sales of one pre-loved fashion garment a second throughout 2022. So this is a major shift. People are dropping their barriers to buying secondhand. They're happy to buy secondhand not just across clothing, but across home, across other areas. There was a huge rise this year in secondhand gifting at Christmas, people purchasing secondhand items as gifts. And we're seeing it spread and seeing an uptick in acceptance by the customer in more and more different areas. Because really, frankly, secondhand ticks two major boxes. It ticks sustainability, which is pretty much second nature now. Most trend reports almost don't talk about sustainability so much anymore because it's just become second nature to the consumer. They want to shop with customers they want to shop with brands that are really aligned with their ethics and values. They want to shop in a way that is less harmful to the planet. So secondhand obviously ticks that box, and it ticks the value for money box. So it's a really powerful combination, plus it's just become more trendy, more accepted by everybody, especially the younger generations. So it's going to be something that increases throughout the years, as we've seen. That's expected to be an 85% for years. Sorry, felt like my mic kept cutting out. So what does it mean for you? The difficulty is secondhand doesn't work for everybody. So some of you will be sitting here today saying, well, secondhand just isn't an option for me in my business. I think what it's worth thinking about is that secondhand, if you can implement it, or could it be something that you experiment with? At the very least, if it just isn't workable for you because the products that you sell just don't retain value enough, or just logistically, or frankly, it's too difficult to monetize, which is certainly a case for many people, then think about what it's saying. It's saying that people want to shop in a more circular way. So keep thinking about, can you offer repairs? Can you offer lifetime guarantees for some of your products? Can you really focus on the fact that items can be reused for longer? Can you focus on how things can be refilled, for example? I've spoken to candle brands who actually you can send your containers back and have them refilled. Well, make sure you're shouting about it, because the consumer is saying loud and clear they are interested in more circular ways of shopping, especially when it saves them money. Mending, for example, visible mending is hugely on trend. If you look on social media, people love to watch videos of mending. There's lots of evidence here that the consumer just wants that more circular purchasing. And the stats all back it up. So Shopify, for example, they do a report every year. They talk to over 900 of their merchants. 76% of the people that they surveyed said that they would spend more on an item if it was built to last. 63% would spend more on an item if it was less harmful to the environment. So, as I said, sustainability, it's not going anywhere. It's just becoming more and more embedded. But now it's really the onus is on, can you think about circularity in your business and what that might mean for you and how you could include it? Okay, so then the next thing that I want to talk about is the idea of having fans and not consumers. And really for me, what this trend is all about is the fact that trust is a commodity. People want to increasingly shop, not just from people, but from people that they trust. And if you want proof of that, you need look no further than the creator economy, which is a hugely growing area of commerce. So the creator economy was worth £104 billion worldwide in 2022 and is set to grow. If you're wondering what that is, effectively what the creator economy is if people like YouTubers, people like who are on TikTok, they are talking about creating, selling products. They may even be selling other people's products and taking a cut. But what they're doing is they're using their influence with their audience, the fact that these people have a real personal connection with them, in order to sell. And there's part of a general movement of lines blurring between entertainment and commerce. So a lot of social media videos, a lot of live selling, for example, which I'll touch on a little bit. It's all really about people having a growing distrust in big brands, big faceless brands. They want to have that connection with their customers. The good news is, for all the small businesses in this room, you already have a personal connection with your customer, because naturally, as small businesses, you will know your customers, you will have interactions with them. You may well be the person on the end of the customer service email, for example. So make sure that you're really utilizing that. And it also talks about a bigger trend towards acquisition getting harder and harder, especially in the e-commerce space. So things like changes to digital advertising mean it's harder to reach new consumers. A lot of businesses are shifting their focus away from purely trying to acquire new customers, but really to building communities and really trying to maximize loyalty and really, as I said, generate fans. What can you do for your customers that will make them love you, talk about you, share pictures of your products, and get them to come back more frequently? So we're talking about loyalty. We're talking about making sure that you are looking after your best customers. What do you do for them? Do you have a loyalty scheme? Do you have a way of talking to them, of thanking them? Are you looking to create super fans? So super fans are the people who will buy what you produce. They'll come to your events if you're having them. They will tell their friends about you. They will be the ones who buy your gifts for other people, and they will just spread the word. So what can you do to create super fans within your business? Because nothing is more powerful than the power of peer-to-peer word of mouth when it comes to growing your sales. You also want to be focusing very much on gathering your first-party data. So that is your email list. Third-party data, so information like cookies, for example. Cookies have already gone away for Apple and Mozilla Firefox. They're going away on Google by 2024. So there are fewer and fewer ways for people to reach customers through third-party data. So make sure you're collecting your emails. If you think about what's been happening on Twitter this year, then you can see that social media platforms, we all know that that we don't own them, we don't own our space on them, we just effectively renting them from the companies that run them. But I feel like the Twitter story this year has been a real reminder for that. So make sure that you're collecting your emails, because also email is the best way for you to be communicating with those loyal customers and helping you build that fan base. And the final trend that I want to talk to you about is e-commerce evolving. So this graph here, another pictorial representation, this is a fascinating graph that shows you the percentage of your internet sales as total retail. So this is talking about for every £1 that is spent in the retail industry, what percentage of that is spent online, how many pence is spent online. And you can see that it was going up in a fairly normal, standard upward slope from 1995 when it was at 0. And then with the pandemic, we have a huge spike, so it shoots all the way up. And then what you've seen effectively, so that big spike at the end there, that's 2020 when we went into lockdown. And for a long time, e-commerce was almost seen as the one area that was successful, was the sort of winner from the pandemic. What we've seen in 2022 is you can see that from the peak of Christmas 2021, we saw 11 months of month-on-month decline in terms of e-commerce as a percentage of retail sales. Now, the good news for that is it means that people were going back to physical stores. There was a resurgence, people feeling more comfortable in physical spaces again, people wanting and craving that interaction. So what you're seeing is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you are a pure e-commerce brand, it meant that perhaps you had a few headaches in 2022. The other thing to consider is that within that as well, social commerce, so people buying through social media platforms, grew 3 times faster than traditional e-commerce, people buying directly from websites. So in other words, the combination of those factors meant that the sort of traditional method of putting your products up on a website and somebody buying from you, that was declining faster than e-commerce overall. So really, I think that it's certainly not a question of e-commerce is, under any threat, really. A lot of the people that I spoke to pointed out the fact that e-commerce is what they call a sticky behavior. So all those people who bought online during the pandemic, they will now be converted to e-commerce. And also they may be buying e-commerce, for example, in different categories that they weren't purchasing from before. So it's not like the underlying truth is that e-commerce is going to be going anywhere. It will continue to increase. It's just that at one point, we thought the pandemic had accelerated e-commerce adoption by 3 years compared to where it would have been otherwise. And what we really saw in 2022 was a bit of a rebalance. And we're kind of back to where we would have been if you drew a line directly, if you kind of put a ruler on that curve, we'll probably end up in 2023 where we would have been without the pandemic. So it does kind of feel like the pandemic boom has fallen away to an extent. And I think for me, really what it's saying for your business is just being aware of that fact, especially if you're someone who's been predominantly built on e-commerce, is thinking about diversifying, making sure that you have got your wholesale streams, that don't underestimate the impact of physical events, especially when they are very much event-based. At Christmas, for example, you saw a huge footfall in lots of the Christmas shows, people wanting to be out and seeing things in person. And also just making sure that if you are reliant, as I said, on the very traditional method of e-commerce, where you've got your website and that's your main form of selling, thinking about social commerce, thinking about interactive ways, thinking about things like live selling, for example. So live selling, particularly popular on TikTok. I did a story for Forbes earlier last year, on TikTok live selling, and I spoke to a seller who made £50,000 in 2 hours on a TikTok live stream just from UK sales, which is quite eye-opening. And it's just really thinking, as I said, if nothing else, a bit of a thought process. Okay, well, what can I do? If you're heavily reliant on very traditional e-commerce, what can you do in 2023 to get ahead of the moves, get ahead of people wanting to shop in a more interactive way? And maybe try it and have fun with it. It doesn't have to be... The great thing about e-commerce is that it can be quite casual. People don't expect this television-grade produced videos. They just want to see you, they want to see your products, and they want to understand how they can buy from you. So, in conclusion then, preparing for 2023, I'm pretty sure I'm going to stand here next year and say it was a roller coaster. I'm not going to lie. I think that there are going to be a lot of challenges ahead. But I think ultimately what really stuck out to me about 2023 is that so many of the principles that have been guiding retail since the very, very beginning are going to be just as true in 2023. It's about great products. We're here at Top Drawer to see great product. It's going to be about putting your best foot forward, really thinking about what your customer wants. And ultimately, the better tuned in you are to what your customer wants, the better products that you show them, the better chance you have of engaging with them in 2023. I think the key is we have to be realistic. It is challenging times. It is definitely the time to be on top of your numbers, to not have a lot of risk in your business in terms of overstocks, really managing all of your expenses as best you can, but keep focusing on the customer, keep focusing on what they want, and keep showing them something special and interesting and to help move you and them forward. So it's just a bit about me. You can come say hi. I'm on Instagram at Resilient Retail Club. I also have a podcast, The Resilient Retail Game Plan. Come along and have a listen. I've got over 130 episodes if you want to hear more about my thoughts. And I have a book coming out, Tame Your Tiger, How to Stop Your Product Business Eating You Alive. It's launching on the 21st of February. It's available for pre-order, or come and have a chat with me after the talk. Thank you. Right. Do you have time for a question? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Does anyone have? We've got time for just like one or two questions. Does anyone have one? No. or come see me. Yeah. Come. I'll be around. If you want to come up and say hi afterwards, then feel free. Thank you.